Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer to learn more. See you this summer.
So good, so good, so good.
Everything you want for summer is at Nordstrom Rack stores now, and up to 60% off. Stock up and save on the brands you love like Vince, Sam Edelman, Frame, and Free People. Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Welcome to the Susan LoPresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. This is the go-to space for midlife and mature women who are ready to reclaim their health, boost their energy, and live long, vibrant, and purposeful lives. Each week, we dive deep into natural wellness, holistic healing, anti-aging strategy, and healthy lifestyle habits to help you feel your best physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Whether you're navigating menopause, working through chronic conditions, or simply wanting to age gracefully and intentionally, this show is your sanctuary for science-backed insights, powerful stories, and soul-nourishing inspiration. So if you're a woman 40, 50, or older looking to thrive in the next chapter of your life, you're in the right place. Today's guest is Dr. William Bruno. He is a board-certified plastic surgeon based in Beverly Hills, California, where he practiced aesthetic surgery since 2004. As a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, and the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, Dr. Bruno has performed over 6,000 procedures, specializing in breast and body contouring. But his journey didn't stop at physical transformation. It evolved into something far deeper. Nearly a decade ago, Dr. Bruno faced a wake-up call. A coronary artery calcium scan revealed signs of heart disease. Rather than relying solely on pharmaceuticals, he chose to overhaul his lifestyle, focusing on nutrition, fitness, and stress management. The experience sparked a profound passion for preventative medicine, wellness, and longevity. Determined to help others avoid the health crisis that he narrowly escaped, Dr. Bruno launched a digital wellness and longevity course along with a virtual coaching program. These initiatives focused on improving body composition through sustainable lifestyle changes backed by science, not just surgery. Today, he continues to guide and empower patients to take control of their health, often challenging conventional medical advice with cutting-edge insights and compassionate education. Dr. Bruno's mission is clear. Reframe aging not as an inevitability, but as an opportunity to thrive. And without further ado, Dr. Bruno, welcome to my podcast. This is going to be such a powerful episode, and I just can't wait to dive right in. So again, thank you for being here.
Hi, Susan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Let's start by me asking you, Dr. Bruno, what made you change from the career that you were doing, which basically was cosmetic surgery? What happened in your life to make you make that shift?
Well, basically about 8 or 9 years ago, I, on a routine blood test, found out I had high cholesterol, which led to some other tests like a stress test, which was normal. But then I requested a coronary artery calcium scan. which is basically a CAT scan of your heart. They don't inject any dye. It's a very easy study. And it wasn't recommended to me at the time by my cardiologist. I actually asked for it. Being a doctor, I knew about it. And my calcium score was very high, which indicated I had a lot of calcifications in my blood vessels of my heart, my coronary arteries. So that led to another test where they do inject some dye and then they do a CAT scan. It gives you a better picture of what's going on in the heart. But because of that, at the time, I really took a deep dive into nutrition, and I wanted to try to avoid having to take, let's say, statins or cholesterol lowering medicines forever necessarily. So I became, I guess you'd say, almost vegan or very heavily plant-based with my diet, began exercising more, began prioritizing sleep, sort of lifestyle modifications like that in an effort to control the heart disease. So I had those tests repeated about 7 years later, and the heart disease is stabilized. And now that you can get a test like that, the coronary artery calcium scan, where they inject the dye, it's called a CT angiogram. But now, because of AI, they use AI and they superimpose the AI over the image, and they can get a very good look, more specific, accurate look into the blood vessels, and they could tell you like what percentage they're blocked. 28%, 42%, what have you. So based on that, I don't have any soft plaques, really. There's soft plaques or sort of unstable plaques. And then there's hard calcified plaques, which are a little more stable and less likely to break off, because if a plaque breaks off in the blood vessel, it causes a heart attack. If a plaque breaks off in the neck, it causes a stroke. So I'm following that very closely, and I'll probably repeat that test in another couple of years. But that's what really got me interested in health and wellness. And I found myself, treating my patients. I'm a full-time plastic surgeon. I do surgeries all the time. And then I just noticed my patients, they weren't that healthy. And I do treat a lot of, women mostly in my practice, I'd say over the age of 40. And I would just look at their labs and notice, like, metabolically they were unhealthy, whether it was high blood sugar, high cholesterol. So I would just try to give them advice and some strategies. Then I started posting more content on it. And then I went on to create a digital course on wellness and longevity. And now I have a coaching program on how to help patients improve their body composition. So that's just a little background about my story, how I got started into wellness, which has probably been now 8 or 9 years, and trying to focus on letting patients know that they have a lot of control over their health with lifestyle changes. Yes, you might need a medication here or there, but you can make a lot of changes with regard to nutrition, exercise, sleep, etc., to really optimize your life. And then knowing when to get the appropriate tests done. And this, of course, this should all be done in conjunction with your doctor. But, I learned that, you have to be proactive. You have to bring information to your doctor. Don't just wait for that annual physical exam where they say, oh, your labs look okay, and then you don't see a doctor for another year. So that's just a little background about how I got into this.
So for that calcium score, I've done that test a couple of times and it comes back as 0. What number brings you to a concerning point?
Actually, anything over 0 is abnormal. So zero in your case is great. The only thing that it doesn't tell you is the 0 tells you have no calcified plaques. You could have soft plaques, which that test doesn't pick up. The soft plaques are sort of unstable. If you visualize inside the blood vessel, like if it's mucus, it's soft and you can't see that, but those are the more dangerous, unstable ones. So you could, or really anyone who's had a calcium score of 0 might consider getting the CT angiogram, where they inject the dye and use the AI, and that will tell you if you have any soft plaque or any sort of mixed plaque that are kind of in between soft and hard. But a score of 0 is great. In my case, my score was 400. And at the time I was 49 at the time. So that's very high for someone under 50, which led me down that pathway. But certainly a score of 0 is great. And that's a great sign for you and any of your listeners who have a 0. But I would still maybe consult with your primary care cardiologist or internist about, hey, is there a need for a CT angiogram, which now it goes by the name of a Clearly scan, the one that uses the AI. But to your question, yeah, anything over a 0, like some people could get a score of 10, 20, but when you're in the hundreds like I was,
Yeah.
that definitely prompts further testing.
Now, if you do have that soft plaque, what do they do? Do they put you on medication or is it about diet?
It can be both. It depends on other factors like your age, other risk factors you have. How do you turn a soft plaque basically into a hard plaque? Yes, lifestyle, like diet is very important. Anti-inflammatory foods, trying to avoid ultra-processed foods, which cause a lot of inflammation, trying to control your blood sugar. A lot of people think it's just cholesterol that causes heart disease. And although that is a contributing factor, having high levels of blood sugar and subsequently high levels of blood insulin can really lead you down a pathway of having these dangerous soft plaques. And if they don't calcify or mature, they could break off and, again, develop into a heart attack or a stroke. So to your question, yeah, it's a combination of lifestyle, like stop smoking, drink less, lose weight, exercise more. And then maybe if you need a cholesterol lowering medication like a statin, that might be part of the overall plan. And then repeat the test. I always tell my patients, don't guess, test, right? This is sort of the saying. It's like some people think, well, I feel okay. I think my blood pressure is okay. I think my cholesterol is okay. But I would just be mindful of that. If you found out you had soft plaques, check it in 6 months to a year, and hopefully the soft plaques are starting to stabilize and they're not going to harm you down the road.
Are there any signs to someone who, so if you haven't been to the doctor in a while and you have heart disease and you don't know it, are there any little telltale symptoms that we should look out for?
Some people might experience fatigue when walking or doing activity for a short distance. If someone's out of breath after walking 2 or 3 blocks, or they go upstairs and they feel a lot of, say, tightness in their legs, or certainly tightness in the chest, or any chest pain leading to the left arm or the jaw, certainly those are signs of early coronary artery disease that might lead you to a stress test, like for example. But oftentimes it's silent, and over 50% of heart attacks happen without symptoms, and unfortunately half of heart attacks end in death. So you could say sudden death is the first symptom in about half of heart attacks.
Wow.
Which I know it's not a symptom, but
Right.
unfortunately that's what happens. So, the classic, left arm, left chest, pain in the left chest. Yes, that can happen, but oftentimes people just have no idea. And a lot of people who have heart attacks, 50% or more, have normal LDL cholesterol.
Wow. There's a lot of schools of thought with cholesterol, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people think, well, cholesterol, it's not causal, but there is a lot of data in the cardiology literature that says elevated LDL cholesterol is causal for atherosclerosis. It's almost, high LDL, like if you have heart disease like I do with a high calcium score, it's required for disease, but it's not sufficient. In other words, if you have high LDL cholesterol, plus you throw in smoking and you throw in obesity and you throw in other factors, then you're really going to tip the scales toward developing more advanced heart disease. But let's say someone like you with a calcium score of 0, if you're leading a pretty healthy lifestyle and you're not smoking and you're maintaining a healthy body weight, you could probably get away with a slightly higher LDL because of your particular situation. In my case, I cannot, at least based on the data, and it's all about managing risk, right? So someone who has a high calcium score, I don't want to push my luck and say, oh yeah, I'm eating well and everything. I know, and what's nice about the calcium score is it tells you if you have disease or not. It doesn't say you're at risk. It says you have disease. Like in my case, I have disease. So I take actions toward that. Like I take a baby aspirin and I reinstituted a very low dose statin in addition to my very sort of healthy lifestyle. But back to your question, do you know? Yeah, there aren't always symptoms, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let's talk about statins for a moment. What's your feeling about taking them?
Again, I think if you have a history of coronary artery disease, or if you have a history of having a previous myocardial infarction, like a heart attack or a stroke, then absolutely the literature would support being on a statin or another type of cholesterol lowering medication to keep your LDL at a certain level. Now I believe the recommendation is to keep it under LDL under 70, in some cases under 55, depending on your situation. And statins are pretty good at doing that, but a lot of cardiologists now are combining statins with other drugs, and there's even an injection. It's called Repatha, which you do twice a month. It's a category of drugs. It's called a PCSK9 inhibitor, and that can really bring your cholesterol down. Like if you had a heart attack, most doctors would put you on a statin, the Repatha, and maybe even a third drug to keep the LDL as low as possible. I think statins get a bad reputation because they say they have side effects. They could cause high blood sugar and dementia and muscle pains, but those are actually much less frequent than people talk about. So I think, I think if you need medication to control your blood sugar and prevent a cardiac event, then absolutely do it, as long as you can tolerate the side effects. People get worried about, well, if you don't have cholesterol, then you can't make hormones, you can't make estrogen, testosterone. That's not true.
Yeah, there's so many different schools of thought when it comes to that. So why do you suppose that the U.S. is so much more unhealthy? Why is there so much disease going on in the U.S. today?
I think part of it, or a big part of it, is, the food supply in this country and the reliance, I guess you could say, on ultra processed foods. I think the statistic is about 65 to 70% of most Americans' diets consists of ultra processed foods, things that are, not a single ingredient food, right? These are foods that come in packages and chips and packaged foods, frozen foods, that sort of thing. I think that's contributing to the chronic disease. When I say chronic disease, like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, dementia, and some forms of cancer, which are probably the top four killers, in this country. And also, I think in the medical system, of which I am a product of, we don't get this type of training in medical school about prevention. So we're just trying to treat symptoms here and there, but we're not getting at the root cause. Like, for example, type 2 diabetes is essentially preventable with diet, lifestyle, exercise, and heart disease, to another extent, you could say, is preventable. Now, there's some rare genetic diseases, but I'm talking about atherosclerosis that most people, end up dying from, which again, yes, in this country, in men and women, heart disease is the number one killer, and it's the number one killer in the world. That's why I think people need to take it a little bit more, I guess, seriously as far as screening and, prevention. But to your question, if we tried to prevent a lot of these diseases at the education level, like in med school, only 1 out of 5 med schools is teaching any kind of nutrition.
Right. I heard
that's
that.
Today. Yeah. And 30 years ago, when I went to med school, it was the same way. It was really, you got a couple hours on nutrition, and it was only things that were, like a vitamin deficiency, like scurvy or vitamin C. It wasn't really any practical nutrition.
Yeah.
But I think if doctors could start educating their patients more earlier on, instead of getting the patients in their 50s and 60s where they already have advanced heart disease, they have advanced diabetes or dementia, or cancers are diagnosed later. And then we're just treating, the symptoms. And I think in this country, most of the healthcare dollars go into treatment. I think it's 80% of the US healthcare dollar goes into treating symptoms. Very little money goes into prevention. So I guess that and the food supply, to answer your question, are probably two of the big factors out there. I mean, other countries, right? You go to Europe, they have cleaner food. They don't allow certain chemicals in their food. This country, it's like the food that we get to eat wouldn't pass certain tests for the animals in Europe to eat, their livestock to eat. So it's kind of crazy that we as Americans are just consuming a lot of additives and chemicals in our food that are contributing to our chronic diseases.
Yeah. What about lifestyle and genetics? Why are we not at the mercy of our DNA?
Yeah, as it turns out, only about, and this number varies a little bit depending on different studies,
Yeah.
about 20 to 25% of our lifespan is really dependent upon our genetics. So that leaves you about 75 to 80% of all of us can improve the quality of our life and the length of our life through lifestyle changes. Again, optimal diets, not smoking, maintaining healthy body weights, exercising, optimizing sleep, controlling stress. That can help control, let's say you don't have good genes, so to speak, that 20% isn't good. There's something called epigenetics where the lifestyle will dictate the expression of those genes. So if you have a gene that, let's say, might give you a tendency towards heart disease or dementia, you can adopt certain lifestyles to suppress those genes. So you're absolutely not a victim of your genes. A lot of people think, well, my mother or father or my grandparents died of a certain disease, therefore I guess I'm going to die from that. And that's not true. I think what we inherit from our families are traditions. We inherit certain foods, behaviors, certain diets, things like that. So yeah, that's the field of epigenetics, and it's come a long way, and it's really empowering, I think, to us or all patients out there, people out there, to know that you have a lot of control over it. The saying is genes load the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, you're not really a victim to quote unquote bad genes.
Yes. Well, it's interesting that you say that. In my family, Alzheimer's is prevalent, and I actually test positive for the gene, the APO4E, I think it
Yeah,
is.
ApoE4, yeah.
Yeah. And so because of that, I do everything that I can to maintain good brain health. I really pay a lot of attention to that because it's a terrible disease, Alzheimer's, to watch someone really just they disappear basically. They're still there physically, but they're not the same person, and it's a very hard disease to watch. So I know what you mean by that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, why is it that eat less, move more is the most dangerous advice in health?
I think a lot of people have adopted that strategy, whether they were told that by their physician or something they think is, well, I'll just eat fewer calories and try to, you know, do more cardio, for example, to burn more calories. But as it turns out, the fewer calories you eat, your body will adapt. Like, I think your listeners out there and maybe yourself have tried diets where initially you're like, I'm going to drop my calories and I'm seeing a little bit of weight loss, and then it plateaus. The reason that happens is your body's metabolism slows down because it feels that you're in a situation where you no longer have access to food. So if let's say you need 1,800 calories a day, but now you're just eating 1,100, that's such a steep caloric reduction that your metabolic rate shuts down, and then your body will start catabolizing, let's say, muscle, for example, and start breaking down other body tissues to keep you alive. So I think eating less, moving more isn't a long-term strategy. I think the long-term strategy really is trying to optimize your nutrition. Most people probably need to eat more protein, eat more fiber. Those two things will make you feel more full. So it's not about reducing the calories. I think it's more about adding more muscle to your frame, adding more muscle to our bodies, which that in turn increases your resting metabolic rate. Because as it turns out, cardio and excessive high intensity cardio that a lot of people end up doing in these classes, right? They go to Orange Theory and Soul
Yeah.
Cycle and things like that. You will burn calories during that class, but when the class stops, you're not burning any more calories. And in fact, in some cases, you create a lot of stress to the body, increased levels of cortisol. And then women, especially in middle age, find themselves gaining weight around the lower abdominal area, where really, if people want to lose fat and maybe build muscle, it's really weight training and optimizing their protein, which I know is a different philosophy compared to back in the 80s. Everyone, especially women, were like on the treadmill, eat
Yes.
less, just eat salads, cardio, cardio, cardio. And you see where that's gotten us. Well, this country is still one of the, if not in the top 5 most obese sickest countries in the world. So I think the shift is starting to happen where if you want to lose weight, if you want to, let's say, optimize your body composition, start doing resistance training, some form of weight training. It could be with body weight, it could be bands, whatever, and start eating, appropriate amounts of protein, which is about a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. That will serve you much better than the eat less, move more, which I think that philosophy has contributed to people, being, let's say, skinny fat, right? Where they call that sarcopenic obesity, where sarcopenia is lack of muscle and they have more fat, which, to be honest, is kind of where I was 8 years ago when I started this journey. And I didn't know anything about this. And I've improved my body composition, doing all that in my 50s. So it's never too late to, let's say, start lifting weights or to improve your body composition, which isn't just about aesthetics. You will improve your health by having more muscle. This isn't about being a bodybuilder or anything. This is about just thriving as we get into our 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond.
Yes. How do you feel about animal protein?
I was vegan for a number of years, and I began to reintroduce actually grass-fed beef and pasture-raised eggs over the course of the last year or so. And I learned more about that. And the data would suggest animal protein is good for you as long as it's not ultra processed, right? Like hot dogs and cold cuts and maybe sausage, things like that. Most people would agree those can contribute to heart disease and type 2 diabetes and cancer. But if you're talking about, healthier cuts of meat that are not processed, these are organic, pasture raised, or wild caught salmon, what have you, absolutely. And some studies would suggest that protein is more bioavailable and will be better served to your body, easier to build muscle and so on. So I think the misconception that, let's say, red meat causes heart disease, that is a misconception, I would say now. It's just, how is the meat cooked? Where does the meat come from? Is the beef grass-fed, grass-finished versus if it ate corn its whole life? So I think there's a lot of variables there, but I am in favor of it now, which is, if you asked me 8 years ago, I thought, oh, you have to be vegan because red meat is inflammatory. But it turns out most of the red meat, I guess I was eating, a lot of Americans eat, is processed, and that is bad for you. But there are ways to eat meat and to thrive and be healthy.
Yes, absolutely. So that's great information. What are the top tests that your doctor may not offer you but could change your life?
I think we touched upon the coronary artery calcium scan and the CT angiogram. If I sort of collectively put those together, let's call that cardiac screening, because I think for men and women, that's definitely, especially, I'd say anyone over 40 should really have a coronary artery calcium scan, so the baseline screening. It's a test that's not that expensive. It might be $200 or $250, and typically it's not covered by insurance, so you'd have to ask for it. And I think if we're thinking about other tests your doctors might not tell you about, is what's the number 2 killer in the country? It's cancer. What's a good test for that? There is a blood test. It's called Gallery, and this is a blood test by a company called Grail, where it will screen for 50 different types of cancer just in one blood test. Now, these are cancers that are not ordinarily screened for. It's like not, breast cancer, there's mammograms, and for colon cancer, there's colonoscopies, and you should do those screening tests. But this is another test that I'd recommend anyone over the age of 50. Problem is, it's not covered by insurance. I think it's about $900, but it will detect, let's say, pancreatic cancer or liver cancer, other cancers that we're not screening for. And unfortunately, 70% of the cancers that we get are from cancers that we're not screening for with the mammograms and the pap smears and the colonoscopies. So that's something worth looking into. And another test, it's not a blood test, it's more of a functional test. The number one predictor of longevity, it's something called VO2 max, which stands for the volume of oxygen that your body can use. And this is a test that you may have seen. They put like a mask on you and you're on a treadmill and you're running or cycling, and it measures the amount of oxygen that your cells can use during intense exercise. So in other words, it shows how efficient your mitochondria in your cells are. The mitochondria are sort of the energy powerhouses of the cells. And you'll get a score based on your age. Let's say you're 50. Let's say, okay, people age 50 should have this number. And it's very accurate, probably one of the most accurate tests we have at predicting how long someone will live. The good news is you can improve your VO2 max with cardio training, with high intensity sprint interval training, that sort of thing. So if you're in the lowest, let's say for someone who's in their 50s, if you're in the lowest quintile, like you're in the bottom 20%, you can get yourself, if you can get yourself to that top 20% for your age group, you can reduce your risk of death by over 400%.
Wow.
That's more than stopping smoking. That's more than correcting high blood pressure. That's more than correcting diabetes. So it's very powerful. And it's not something that just like professional cyclists do. Is that if you wanted to get it tested, you could go to like a fitness center, a gym, maybe a physical therapy, facility. And that might cost maybe $200. And just to know where you stand, because as you get into your, let's say 70s, 80s and beyond, you want to have a certain reserve. You want to be able to walk across the room without being short of breath.
Yeah.
But I would say that is the number one test, which is the closest predictor we have to telling us how long we'll live or, our longevity. So those are a couple. I guess I would throw in one more: grip strength.
Oh, yes.
It sounds funny. I have one here, which is, these are called a dynamometer. It looks something like this.
Yes.
And you squeeze it. So why is grip strength important? Grip strength is an overall proxy for your total lean body mass, and lean muscle mass, right, or muscle strength. So it's not to suggest you should practice, grip with your hand, but by having more muscle on your body through, as I mentioned before, weight training, resistance training, the more muscle you have, the longer you will live, the less frail you will be, and the more likely you will be to survive a large bone fracture. For example, anyone over the age of 65, studies have shown if you fall and break a hip, you have a 1 out of 3 chance of dying in a year from that hip fracture. Not necessarily from the fracture, but from a blood clot or a pneumonia or some other side effect. But if you have enough muscle mass on your body, you can hopefully catch yourself, prevent a fall, that sort of thing. So muscle mass, the more you have, the longer you live. And same with the VO2 max, which is more a measure of cardiorespiratory fitness. The higher that score, the longer you'll live. So those are just a couple of tests maybe to think about or ask your doctor about looking into.
Let's go back to the grip strength. So how can one improve their grip strength?
One sort of simple way is a dead hang from a pull-up bar.
Okay.
Just seeing like how long can you hang. Depending on your age, I say the minimum would be like 30 seconds, which is actually pretty hard. Like, the more fit you are, the longer you can hang. Like if you can hang from a bar for 60, 90 seconds up to 2 minutes, that's an overall indicator, let's say, of your upper body strength. It's not as accurate as an indicator for lower body strength, but for the tests we have now, and again, with the use of something like a dynamometer, it gives you a pretty good proxy to someone's overall health. So how do you improve it? The weight training, resistance training, overall. So It's not that you have to have a strong hand per se.
Okay.
Let's just assume you have a strong upper body, like, biceps, back, chest, etc.
Right. So let's go into the programs that you have. Talk about your coaching program that's online.
Yeah, I have a coaching program. It's called the Body Recomposition Formula, where it's a 6-month program where at the start of it, patients get comprehensive blood testing. And this is blood testing that most people aren't typically getting, looking at not just the regular lipid panel, we're looking at a fractionated panel, which means showing the particle size of your LDL or HDL, like how big are these particles, how many of them, and also looking at fasting insulin, looking at hemoglobin A1C, just certain metabolic markers. Then I'll have patients get a DEXA scan. I didn't mention that before, but a DEXA scan is a sort of an X-ray of the body. These you can get anywhere, really. They're like $50, and it tells you your percent body fat, your muscle mass, your visceral fat, which is the internal fat we have. And it also gives you a pretty good estimation of what is your resting metabolic rate. basically how many calories are you burning at rest. And then I'll send patients an Oura ring to track their sleep.
Oh.
So we get this information up front, and then I meet with them twice a month virtually, and we go over coaching, we go over certain topics like exercise, nutrition, sleep, supplements, other alternative therapies, hot sauna, cold plunge, things like that. And then at the end of 6 months, we repeat their blood work and repeat their DEXA scan, to show them their progress. And I think it's nice because some people never even think about how well am I sleeping? That's why I put an emphasis on that. And I gift patients an Oura ring because I really want them to start looking at their sleep, trying to optimize their sleep, because the quality of sleep you get is really closely related to your body composition. Fat burning happens at night. Muscle building happens, in our sleep when our hormones are more active. So the things you're doing during the day count, but the sleep can't be ignored.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a program that I have. It helps, patients to lose fat and build muscle. So yes, there's aesthetic benefits to that, but it's really the health benefits, because if your body composition improves, you're going to live longer and be healthier. And then I also have an online digital course, which is similar to that, but it's more wellness and longevity. It's a pre-recorded, it's about 7 hours of content where patients can go through and essentially create their own longevity blueprint. So that one is more a do-it-yourself, whereas if someone does need help, there's some coaching around it. And that one's available, if someone just wants to go at their own pace and kind of learn more about aging and disease prevention and which tests to get, some of the things we talked about today, but in much more detail.
Yeah. So the first program that you spoke about, is that you do one-on-ones with patients, or is it a group?
I do one-on-ones virtually twice a month. So the first visit is just going over they fill out questionnaires, and this is all done through a portal where all the forms and all the labs are uploaded. But yeah, then we'll meet twice a month for 6 months. And then in the end, we will either, finish, or some patients will go into a continuity program, or we'll check in once a month and kind of check in where they're at. But I would stress to patients, or, all the listeners out there, just, start to think about what can you measure, whether it's steps, whether it's even just weighing yourself every day, whether it's, keeping a closer eye on your cholesterol or your blood pressure or something, or your sleep. Because a lot of times once you figure out where you're at, then you can make improvements. They say, all right, what gets measured gets managed. And I find a lot of people have no idea where their starting point is. And they, when we get the DEXA scan, for example, they're like, well, I had no idea I'm 30% body fat, which is kind of unhealthy. You want someone to be, let's say, in the 20s. But it's always good just to have these objective tests and then make changes and then retest.
That's great. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
I would leave with this, because I get a lot of people asking me about certain supplements or red light therapy or exotic things. And I think people want to start there, where sort of the basics of it, and this is the framework I used in the digital online course, is I taught it through this longevity pyramid. So just think, at the base of this pyramid, I have exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And if you could really optimize and maximize those things, that's probably 80 or 90% of your wellness, of your health span, of your lifespan. The other things, as you move up the pyramid, sure, you're going to add, maybe there's different supplements you want to add, or red light therapy, or you want to do an IV infusion of glutathione or NAD. And I find a lot of people want to jump to those sort of more exotic, sexier interventions, or peptides or stem cells, which might move the needle 1, 2, 3%. Focus on the basics and take action. In nutrition, say, I'm going to start to be intentional and try to eat a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Or in exercise, you're how many steps am I taking now? Most people on their iPhones or their wearables can track that and say, well, I'm only doing 4,000 steps a day. Let's shoot for 5,000 and just make these changes. And if it's sleep, people are like, well, I sleep 5 or 6 hours. I can get by on that. Very few people can get by on 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
You can live, but you're not thriving. So you say, well, maybe should I invest in an Oura ring? Should I try to, I don't know, go to bed earlier? Should I cut off my screen time? Or I wear blue blocker glasses, for example, at night, cuts down the blue light from television.
Yes.
But just take action and try to make a small change, because I think longevity is about these small daily changes that we make. It's not about high-tech gadgets and technology. And I think sometimes it's easy to get distracted on social media when you're looking for like this magic injection or supplement, when reality is it's just kind of going back to the basics of eating right and moving and sleeping, reducing stress, getting daily sunlight in the morning, and kind of these more ancestral habits as opposed to, gadgets and technology.
I love that advice.
Yeah.
It's simplicity. You don't have to complicate your life. We're already complicated. So
Right.
just
And a lot of
simple
it's free.
steps.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of that's free. Like, go outside in the sun, put your bare feet in the ground. They call this
Yes.
grounding, earthing. Lots of benefits to that. Sure, some things do cost money, certain tests we talked about, but a lot of it is free. And if you are going to spend money, spend it maybe on getting better quality food, maybe spending it on
Absolutely.
getting a personal trainer to teach you some basics. You don't have to have a personal trainer forever. And maybe an Oura ring. Just kind of start there.
So where could people find you?
Yeah, my website, it's my name, which is williambrunomd.com.
Okay.
And then I have a drop-down tab, a wellness tab there. And on there, I have 2 ebooks that are free that your
great.
listeners might want to see. One is an ebook on longevity, which is just 14 pages. It kind of goes over 10 basic steps. It's like bullet points. It's very actionable steps you could take. And the other ebook is about how to improve your body composition. And then my course is there, and then the program. And I'm pretty active on Instagram. Also, same, William Bruno MD. There's a lot of plastic surgery content there, but there's also a lot of wellness content there. And if anyone has questions, they can send me a direct message or just reach out through my website.
Excellent. Dr. Bruno, thank you so much. This was so informative. I love what you're doing, and I appreciate all of your work. And thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity, Susan. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Also, if you think that this episode could benefit someone who you know and love, please share it out with them. If you'd like more information, please go to Dr. Bruno's website. It's www.williambrunomd.com. From there, you can see his health coaching programs, and you can also download his free ebook. Again, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Until the next time, be well, stay happy, and bye for now. Take good care, everyone.